Hello everyone, it's Oliver Harper here, and I'm back with Rob Hill for an audio commentary, and this time it's on the 1978 film Game of Death. Now Rob, you are currently putting together a massive video on all the Bruceploitation films. So, how is that coming along, and when's it coming out?
It's coming along slowly. Is probably the answer. Yeah, it's as you mentioned. Yeah, it's epic. So it's taking a long time because there's just so much to cover. It's looking like about 3 hours long, 200 movies at the moment.
I had no idea there was over 200 movies. I always thought it was maybe like 50 or something like that on a sort of, I've seen the Clones of Bruce Lee documentary and there's quite a lot, but I didn't. It doesn't get to the point where it gets to that large amount.
I think there's probably about 120 core Bruceploitation movies, but then once you start digging and once you extend the time window beyond like the end of traditional Bruceploitation in the early 80s, you get and also just the handful of movies that need to be in the conversation, whether or not they technically count.
Does the episode of Taskmaster with Phil Wang as wearing Bruce Lee's yellow suit count?
I didn't know that was a thing. But
one episode of Taskmaster, the whole series, the 7th season of Taskmaster, Phil Wang, the stand-up comedian, wears Bruce Lee's jumpsuit.
No way. Okay, well now I'm going to have to watch that.
Add that to your list. Now, before we get into this, do you think this is one of the worst offenders of Bruceploitation?
It depends which way you look at it. I think ethically it is one of the worst, if not the worst. But I mean, objectively, as a film in its own right, there's far more offensive 90 minutes you can spend watching people kick each other. But I do think it's generally speaking quite a bad thing to exist.
Yes, there's a few points we'll get to throughout, which is like, ooh, that is bad taste,
Yeah, but when we get past most of that by the halfway point, and then of course the last 20 minutes is proper.
The last chunk of the movie is the best bit, and the rest of it's all just filler. So folks, if you wish to sync this commentary with your own copy of the film, bear in mind this version is 1 hour and 41 minutes roughly. There are many other edits out there, but I believe this one is the most common version. Start the film from the beginning of the Golden Harvest logo and press play now. Game of Death in glorious mono. This does come though with a cracking John Barry score. Very James Bond-esque, isn't it?
Yep. That was all part of the. It's very much the American release that has that James Bond vibe, which obviously carries over from Enter the Dragon.
Because the Hong Kong version the Chinese version has a sort of more simple kind of opening sequence and has a song. Very much in the vein of a James Bond kind of movie, but.
It's a weird kind of love song almost, but it's not this kind of international man of mystery type opening that Robert Klaus went with.
This intro has to be sort of as kind of on the point with the visual representation of Game of Death, because at first, right, you see like the card deck machine. I thought it was like a dustbuster, at first when you see it, but it's like Casino Royale.
Yeah, even though none of this has any real connection, thematically or otherwise, to the movie.
So Robert Klaus knew that. Well, I suppose most people of the production team going into this of Golden Harvest, all the Bruceploitation movies from '73 onwards had already taken on the idea of Bruce Lee's original concept for Game of Death, was pagoda, where he's going up these kind of floors to fight different styles of kind of martial arts, and they weren't going to do the same thing, so they constructed their own kind of story around all this. Which is, I don't know, I suppose at the time you probably would have thought, okay, we've got to try and offer something that hasn't been done before, but it's a huge stretch just to try and make everything else kind of fit around essentially 12 minutes of footage of what they use out of I think Bruce had shot maybe 2 hours of stuff, but only 30 minutes is usable in terms of a story, which would later see on the DVDs and Blu-rays, and there's kind of many little edits people have done of the footage and different audio dubs and different grading of the film as well. Because when I was younger, he's wearing a yellow jumpsuit, but when you sit near the end, it's kind of more of an orange kind of colour to it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of continuity issues like that.
Definitely. So when they splice in what they've shot in '78 with the old stuff, it's kind of a weird grading thing. And then when they put out some of the DVD extras with the, the footage of Game of Death, it's kind of again different color grade. But I do actually quite like the color grade of what they do with the original footage in this film compared to what they put out on some of the DVDs, where it's like really blown out the brightness. This is going to be a technical waffle now, but
we should probably contextualise this a bit, shouldn't we? I'm sure
yes.
90% of people know the story behind this movie, but effectively Bruce Lee came up with this idea. He shot 3 fight scenes in October of 1972. Warner Brothers then approached him to make Enter the Dragon, so he put Game of Death on hold, went off to make Enter the Dragon, and of course never came back, sadly. And what Golden Harvest, the company that Bruce Lee effectively he didn't co-own it, but he did co-own a company called Concord with Raymond Chow, which owned all of his films. So Golden Harvest had this incredibly valuable footage, but nothing they could really do with it. Linda Lee, Bruce's wife, wasn't in the best of places, was very unhappy with the whole Bruceploitation movement, didn't want to do anything with it, but then, for financial reasons, had to sell her stake in Concord. So she ended up selling all of Bruce's movies back to Raymond Chow and Golden Harvest. They then started, what can we do with this footage? They will tell you, as you just said, that because Bruceploitation was such a big thing by that point, that all these plot lines and tropes and scenes and so on had all been used up. And so they had to come up with a different story. I'm very suspicious of that. I think basically they wanted to make a more commercial story. And that is what this movie is. So 5 years after Bruce's death, this was finally released as Game of Death, directed by Robert Clouse, who directed Enter the Dragon, under the instruction of Raymond Chow and Golden Harvest. And the way they did it was with lookalikes, like this guy, who I think is Tong Lung. They did all the things that they'd been complaining about. Andre Morgan, who's the producer of Enter the Dragon and a big player in Bruce's career, actually, and very close to the family. He complains endlessly in the Enter the Clones of Bruce Lee documentary about all these rip-offs and lookalikes and stand-ins. He had a big go at Bruce Lee, then tried to hire Bruce Lee for this film. Bruce Lee said, ethically, I don't want to be involved in this. The leading Bruceploitation actor didn't want to touch this with a barge pole.
Well, the guy who plays Bruce in this, outside of doing the backflips and stuff, would go on to do Tower of Death and No Retreat, No Surrender.
Yes, yeah, it's quite funny. I think that basically his only other movie roles, really.
Pretty much. He's got maybe 2 other credits outside of playing Bruce Lee, but he was a huge fanatic from Korea.
Yeah.
And, we're not obviously discussing much of Game of Death 2 or Tower of Death, but Tower of Death is a brilliant movie.
Tower of Death is a lot of fun. Yeah, it's mad as a bicycle, but
exactly that's why I love it.
Okay, so it makes more sense, and they do what they probably should have done in this anyway, really, and sideline the Bruce character, who of course isn't actually called Bruce Lee. He's called Billy Lowe. Which is a name invented by Klaus and Golden Harvest. It isn't what the character's originally called. We're talking over some of the classic bits here, aren't we? Yeah.
They start out thinking, this could be a good idea. Let's optically put on his face. It's like Bruce Lee's face on like a cereal packet, idea. You put it on your face as a kid, or the William Shatner mask. It's kind of like that look just stuck on, And then the bit where they optically add in the scar, the towel around his shoulders.
And they're both in this sequence, and I think they're about the only 2 examples of these weird attempts to splice the real Bruce into a shot.
I think there may be one very later on, a very quick optically done shot, I think.
But it is as if they realised, this looks stupid, we have to stop doing it. Because it was shot pretty much in order, I think. For some reason, I don't know why, but it was apparently shot largely in order.
Miss Colleen Camp from Die Hard with a Vengeance. Clue?
Yes. That blew my mind to realise she's the policewoman in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
She's in tons of stuff, man. I think she's, out of all the cast here, she probably went on to be the most successful.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're probably right. Because Tang Lung here, actually, I don't think that is Tang Lung. I think that is that businessman whose name I can never remember. Chen Yo Po was a local Hong Kong businessman, not an actor. and he was spotted by, I think it was Samo. And they brought him in to do, like, every now and again, if you see a reasonably clear shot of Bruce's face, and it obviously isn't Bruce, and he isn't doing any talking or acting or fighting or anything like that, it's generally this guy Chen Yo-po. But most of the time it's Tang Lung, who, as you say, who plays Bruce Lee in No Retreat. And he's also in a Bruceploitation movie called Jackie and Bruce to the Rescue, which kind of marks the end of the Bruceploitation era, really, because obviously it's when Jackie started to become a big thing.
You were saying earlier about the sort of, in regards to the story, because this one was, this film was pretty commercially successful, and especially with the Western audience, because it was far more easier to understand and compared to Bruce's movies outside of Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, and it was full of Western actors, which none of his other Hong Kong films were.
So people found it a little more easier to sort of follow, and but it's I remember watching when I was a kid, think, who's this old man, Dean Jagger, or Jagger? I don't know how to pronounce his surname correctly.
That is Jagger.
He's just super old man to play this kind of he's a crime boss, and the only other people I kind of recognised was like Bob Wall, who hated Robert Klaus, and there's a great interview with Bob Wall from like 15 years ago. It's always on every DVD or Blu-ray, just insulting Robert Klaus. And he also says, I think he's got his memory mixed up, where he says when he fights Bruce or Billy Lowe in the locker room, he goes, "Oh, we did shoot some of that with Bruce." Like, that can't be possible.
Yeah, I mean, there is still footage. Potentially, there's still footage that hasn't been recovered because nobody knows exactly really what was shot. Records weren't great. I know there was because Bay Logan found most of this missing footage, didn't he? Famously,
yes.
Bruce shot an hour and a half or whatever it is of footage.
There's about 2 hours.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that includes outtakes. It's not like 2 hours of usable shots.
Well, I think only about 30 minutes was kind of usable, maybe a little bit more.
Something like 35 minutes, I think, is usually but there's only 10 or 12 minutes in this movie because Robert Klaus, Robert Klaus's whole objective with Game of Death was to use as little of Bruce Lee's footage as possible. Just another example of how he really got the mission here. Yeah,
because we have the flashback now. Is it James Chen who fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Yeah, James Tien, yeah.
Because So later on, when they show the actual footage of Game of Death, they've cut those two out, but you can see one of them on the floor in the background, or some of their shadows in the corner. So
we'll definitely get to that later. But of the footage Bruce shot, it includes these two other characters.
It's mad, isn't it? That he didn't. It's kind of very minimalistic with using Bruce's stuff. We saw early on with Chuck Norris, and he was pissed that they actually used him in the marketing.
Yeah,
and I think they settled out of court or something like that because not happy. I think a lot of people that asked to come in, like Bruce's friends, to sort of take part in the film, they all thought it generally was bad taste to do this.
That's definitely not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Great, isn't it?
Yeah, as you say, a lot of people Bruce knew and had originally penned to be in the movie were approached, and obviously a lot of people like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who had actually shot footage were approached to return, and none of them wanted anything to do with it because they weren't comfortable, apart from Dan Inosanto. And there's a strange story there we'll get to at some point. And Bob Wall, yeah.
Because he was supposed to be part of the Pagoda as well, right?
He was. He didn't actually shoot it. Like you say, he's not believed to have shot any footage with Bruce. So he's kind of a returning actor, but also kind of not. But maybe he did. At the end of the day, I don't think we can really be sure.
Yeah, because it's all just like hearsay and sort of notes and stuff. So I know George Lazenby was also considered Bolo Young at the beginning. Bolo was supposed to be near the bottom floor where he fights like over 20 people at once or something like that,
Yeah, Bolo was meant to be the guardian of the courtyard or something like that, and he was meant to be a karate master with like a dozen of his black belts, and that's the first group that's to get in. That's for Bruce, who in his version of the film is with two of his friends. James Tien, and is it Get Q? I can never remember his name either. And obviously they work their way up the pagoda, which we'll talk about a bit later because there's a lot of meat to get into there. But when it was obviously he didn't shoot that scene with Bolo, so they couldn't include any of that footage. So it's reduced down to 3 Guardians on 3 floors rather than 5 on 5 floors plus Bolo outside.
Wasn't there supposed to be another floor above Kareem?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows because the Bruce's
That's
notes
the prize,
don't.
right?
Yeah,
Like that.
so it's in the original film in Bruce's concept. We don't know exactly what was on that top floor, what the objective of the movie is, what the MacGuffin is, but it's meant to be some sort of Chinese artifact, historical artifact that's archaeologically important that's been stolen. And Bruce is there to get it back against his will. He's been blackmailed into it essentially through his girlfriend or his mum or both being kidnapped. But nobody has ever found any notes or script pages or anything that reveal what is actually on that top floor. And weirdly, in the footage Bruce shot, he doesn't ascend that final set of stairs. He walks away from it and goes to the window. So it's a complete mystery. But we know that George Lazenby says that he was going to be up there somehow, but not as a bad guy. He was meant to be Bruce's like spiritual advisor or something. You know, the crap James Bond, that guy. So he and he would arrive at the last minute to save Bruce with some kind of spirit. But that's George Lazenby telling that story of how he saves Bruce Lee. I don't know if it's true. And here, this is the one good idea that Klaus had was to have an explanation as to why Bruce is wearing that ridiculous yellow jumpsuit in the end. The bad guys have this uniform.
Well, Bay Logan said it was some sort of continuity gap in terms of like making sense. You know, like if they're trying to be inconspicuous, why wear these jumpsuits?
Yeah.
But, you know,
but then also like, are they trying to be inconspicuous? If they're triads and they run the town, then. But it is worth pointing out this fight here with this guy in the black jumpsuit with the yellow stripe. That has long led to a theory that Bruce's jumpsuit was actually meant to be black. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar again, absolutely, definitely Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that is. There's a theory that Bruce's jumpsuit was meant to be black with a yellow stripe, but that it's tricky to film action details in someone in an all-black suit at the best of times. And of course the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar fight takes place in low light. So I think there's a common theory that suggests it was meant to be black with a yellow stripe but was changed. But it is still important though. It's important to note what he's wearing because it's so non-traditional.
Well, that all plays into his Jeet Kune Do thing, isn't it?
Exactly. His whole philosophy was about evolving, moving forwards, not hanging on to things that are not relevant anymore from the past, which is, I think it's very important to note that 4 of his 5 films, unlike most Kung Fu movies, take place in the present, in contemporary times. Only Fist of Fury is set in the past, and that was only set 40 or 50 years in the past from when it was made. These like historical Qing-era Kung Fu movies that make up most of the genre, he never made. And whether or not he would have done had he lived longer, it seems likely he would, almost certain.
Well, there were some random like photos where he'd posed in his kind of like had this kind of long hair thing and like his outfits that were kind of from the past. So that was only for like a concept thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there was it was certainly shot in costume as Wong Fei Hung at some point. And this fight here, which is presented as a flashback, is actually so great. It's actually taking part later on, obviously. This is James Tien. The reason he's here and Bruce isn't, as we learn from this extraordinary 3-hour documentary that Arrow produced, is he's run on ahead. James Tien here turns out to be a scumbag. He's meant to be Bruce's friend, but it turns out he's only interested in his own glory, as it were. So Bruce, at that point, is on the floor below fighting the Hapkido expert, and James Tien has run on ahead. And we see, during Bruce's fight with the Hapkido expert, we see evidence of that fight taking place, like big thumps coming from upstairs and then dust falling down.
Isn't it?
And it makes you realise just how much more sophisticated Bruce's idea for that conclusion is. There is so much more going on in that fight up the pagoda than in Bruce's head and concept than there was in this final movie. It's ridiculous.
You just think back to what, because Bruce still hadn't figured out the story. It's that classic Hong Kong way of making. Let's just shoot the fights and just make up the script as we go along, right, and see what we come up with. And he was kind of in a similar sort of route with that, and I'm sure he would have devised something kind of an interesting starting off point to get to the end. But if it was as simple as just going up pagoda, fighting different styles of martial arts, it would have been great to watch as an action fan. But I think as someone who wanted a start, middle, and end of an interesting story, it may have been quite thin. Its kind of final version, if it was ever conceived that way. Because that's kind of like when some people sort of struggle with the Hong Kong Bruce Lee movies outside of Enter the Dragon, because Enter the Dragon has a kind of a far more kind of easier narrative and kind of straightforward story that's kind of really gets you into it straight away, because as we've all pointed out before, it's basically Dr. No meets Hong Kong action movie, right? So in the case of this is all kind of guy who's changes his identity, get revenge on these guys, this crime boss. That's kind of it.
Yeah. Plots aren't always the biggest aspect of Hong Kong action movies. It's fair to say.
Well, yeah.
Like I do think there are ways to do it that are more accessible to Western audiences. I think, not that it's entirely relevant to this, but I've always thought Fist of Fury is a perfectly accessible movie. Because
that's my favourite one.
I think it's mine as well. I might even prefer it to Enter the Dragon, but I think it's got, it's a simple premise. We can all relate to it. We can all understand it. We can all follow it. But then there are other, like Way of the Dragon, I adore, but I can see that that's a little bit maybe hard. Certainly there's a lot of humour in the first part, which is not. But yeah, this is Dan Inosanto here. We should mention arriving.
And Bob Wall said there was no script for Way of the Dragon. He goes, he's never seen one. There wasn't one on set, and Bruce was kind of making up as he goes. And that's kind of, if that is true, that probably explains why the film is very all over the place.
It's a series of scenes, as a Fist of Fury is, really. But that structure lends itself better to that kind of movie, I think.
And we see a gentleman coming up soon who was in Enter the Dragon as I forget the gentleman's name now. Right, I wrote a note earlier. Where has he gone? Oh yeah, Roy Hung.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So he's in Temple of Doom. He's in Bloodsport, of course.
Roy Cho Hung or Roy Hung Cho. What's it? Yeah, we're gonna get. I apologise now to if anyone of Mandarin or Cantonese extraction is listening. We are going to get names wrong. We're going to pronounce them wrong. We're going to get them in the wrong order. We're quite low.
Because he had his scene in Enter the Dragon, which was it was at the beginning where Bruce fights Samo Hung. But then he have a discussion with Bruce as sort of his advisor. Well,
he's like the chief abbot. He's the chief monk.
Then that was deleted from the theatrical cut and then put into Tower of Death, Game of Death 2, and then it we restored in the anniversary release of Enter the Dragon, the special edition release. So it kind of gets used twice. And there's a scene in this where Billy Lowe fights this guy in this like garden. This a greenhouse or like a garden centre. Yeah. I thought it looked like, but then that gets cut out and put in Tower of Death. What the fuck?
Welcome to Hong Kong movie making.
Yeah, and a deleted scene from Enter the Dragon, where he's in his room. He's kind of his own room in the on the island, and then that scene gets put in Tower of Death. Anyway,
he's also, of course, Senzo Tanaka in Bloodsport.
That's what I said earlier.
Oh, did you? So I only heard you mention Temple of Doom. For those of us who are even bigger Bloodsport fans than Indiana Jones fans.
Doodly.
Yeah, this is the businessman guy, Chen Yo-po, definitely.
It's the time. If Bruce Lee wasn't known for wearing shades, they'd be so screwed.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this is part of the myth they had to create, like the really distinctive bowl cut that all Like, he hardly ever had that actual hairstyle. If you look at an actual, like, that classic goony kind of bowl cut that really Jackie Chan had more than anyone else. For some reason, all the imitators had to have that as well. Yeah, so Tang Leung.
I'm never a fan of, because no one can get Bruce's voice right, can they? And it was hoo ha hoo. It's just like, this sounds so feeble compared to the sort of cries of noise that Bruce Lee makes. Just like,
well, funnily enough, these are. I remember seeing someone. I can't remember if it was Dan Inosanto or Taki Kimura or one of Bruce Lee's like close confidants was saying that the guy who did the dubbing for Game of Death actually got them pretty good. I think he's called Chris Kent. Is that his name?
Oh, Chris Kent. Yeah, I was reading that. I was like, my eyes just went, oh, is that Clark Kent? No, it's Chris Kent.
The reason I said Chris Kent is because every time I hear his name, I think of you, because Clark Kent comes to mind when I hear Chris Kent. And once I'm on Superman, you're just inevitable.
All of it was in Superman 3, wasn't it?
This Steiner character here, the not Dean Jagger here we're looking at now, but Steiner, the man in the suit sitting down, was meant to be the role Chuck Norris played. That's the role they offered to Chuck. That he said
if
no
that was
to.
Chuck, that would be great, wouldn't it? In this,
can you imagine?
You know, oh, you'd be so happy, wouldn't you, Rob? Rest in peace, Chuck.
Because there's I mean, he doesn't really do much fighting. It might only be that one fight at the end, but
yeah,
I quite like the idea of Chuck just being, like a right-hand man, kind of a heavy, but it's not really his job to do the fighting.
Yeah, that'd be good if you had Chuck and Bob Wall in the same movie. So Bob Wall just looks identical to my dad from the 1970s. So it's always kind of weird seeing this. Is that my dad?
Phone books which do not exist in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Did you watch that Bay Logan commentary?
I did, yeah. I've listened to it so many times over the years. I always, generally when I go back to Game of Death, I always watch it with Bay's commentary on.
I did it a couple of weeks ago before I did the.
There's but as we like to point out, Rob, films that are just that 70s vibe. There's a lot of phone conversations.
Yes.
Right, sitting down, answering the phone.
We actually see someone else in the same phone box a bit later as well. It's obviously it's a prop phone box that, as Bay Logan says, it's in every Golden Harvest movie you see. It's got that English style phone box, even though they were never in Hong Kong. We should probably say we are aware of the accusations against Bay Logan, and I'm not endorsing him in any way, but it's probably worth pointing out they are only accusations. That said, it was enough for me not to contact him with regards to contributing to my video. Yeah, we'll leave that one. Here they are on the Star Ferry, which was the first. I made a beeline for that. I went to Hong Kong on holiday about 20 years ago when I had a proper job and no children. And the Star Ferry was the first thing I wanted to go on, just because of its association with these movies, basically.
Don't they also use it in Dragon the Bruce Lee Story? I think they use it.
Yeah, I think in Dragon the Bruce Lee Story, I've got a feeling they make out that Bruce was like getting on the ferry.
Yeah, Raymond Chow runs and jumps on,
And Raymond Chow comes running up. And
I can't imagine Raymond Chow running.
No, no, he actually he went all the way to Seattle to see Bruce. Either Raymond Chow or his representative.
I think his assistant went.
Yeah.
Well, she went over. Yeah.
He'd approached them, they weren't interested, and then suddenly they decided they were.
So during the course of your video you've put together, Rob, or putting together at the moment, how many Bruceploitation movies were there from 73 to 78?
It does depend how you classify, but I'd guess about 100 just over 100 probably. Just over 100, because there's a bunch that no one seems to know about that are generally lost. Most of the Filipino ones are lost, and there were a bunch of them in the 70s. There's a bunch that you might categorize as Bruceploitation, and you might not. Is it Bruceploitation just because Bruce Lee is in it? And as far as if he's credited as Bruce Lee rather than under his real name, then it's at least in the conversation.
Yeah, because the doubles don't get credited in this, do they? I don't think they do.
I don't think they get screen credits.
It just says Bruce Lee at the end.
Yeah, but then people...
It might be under stunt doubles or something.
A lot of people didn't get credited in these Hong Kong movies anyway, if you weren't a main player.
Now, they say, doesn't they, because Bay points this out, but also it's kind of obvious, if you watch this after The Crow had come out, that it had some sort of bizarre parallels to Brandon's own death.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be using a blank, but he's using a real bullet.
So this is supposed to be Fist of Fury, the set of Fist of Fury, and at the end of Fist of Fury, if you haven't seen it, Bruce is cornered by the police. He's been kind of like a folk hero, and he's killed all the Japanese bad guys, but that means he has to go down. And so he comes running out of his school and does this flying kick towards the ground, and the movie freezes, stops there.
It's supposed to be a rule, isn't there? If you break the law in a movie, you have to be arrested by the end in Chinese movies, right?
Yeah, they were. I mean, it's like the Hays Code that they had in the States. It was basically the same thing. It just lasted a bit longer. So yeah, if you broke the law, and it was, I think in Hong Kong it was pretty much gone by now, by the late 70s. But in other parts of Asia, it was still present, which is why there are two different endings to this movie. It's a Game of Death. There's, the American one, and in the one that was for I think Malaysia, Southeast Asia, certain countries in Asia, they had to have Bruce being arrested at the end, or Billy Lowe being arrested at the end of this. But yeah, the triads who for some reason are or the mafia, maybe they're meant to be, have infiltrated this set, and you can see Mel Novak there crouching with a real gun with a real bullet. So this is how they assassinate Billy Lowe, or how they try to assassinate Billy Lowe in this movie, which is one of the big ethical problems I have with this film, which is purely an intellectual problem, I suppose. It doesn't make any difference to the watching of the movie, but after Bruce Lee's death, there was a complete free-for-all in the press, claiming that he'd been murdered, claiming that the triads had killed, claiming this, claiming that, and claiming that he wasn't dead at all, and that he'd faked his death, Elvis Presley style, as always happens with these people. And I never had a problem with Bruceploitation, morally or ethically, on those grounds at all. But once you watch 200 of these movies in a row and see the same footage 40 or 50 times of Bruce Lee's actual funeral, his actual corpse being repurposed as an exploitation device in a movie, I started to become more sensitive to it. And the problem with Game of Death is that it gives a platform to all these conspiracy theories. It emphasizes the idea that the triad, that Bruce Lee didn't just die of effectively a brain hemorrhage, which is what all the evidence suggests he did. It suggests that the triads were involved, that he faked his death, that there was something dodgy going on. And the only public statements Linda Lee made about Bruce Lee in the immediate aftermath of his death were, please, will you all stop speculating? Please, will you all stop these conspiracy theories? Please, will you? It's really hurtful to me and my children. And it's the only thing she had to say was that. And the problem is, Andre Morgan, the producer of this film and Enter the Dragon, the close friend of the Lee family, all this complaining about other people ripping off it, he then does it in the most cynical way possible. There's actual, he does the works. We get the funeral, we get footage of Linda at the funeral, we get footage of the corpse, all of which is owned by Golden Harvest. They shot all that footage and licensed it for use in the Bruceploitation movies.
They used it again, well, because Golden Harvest had made essentially a biopic the following year, which was directed by NG, C-U-N.
Super Dragon.
Yeah, well, it's different names, man.
Yeah, but there's
that was made as sort of, and it plays fast and loose, and Linda Lee's kind of not treated particularly well.
Yeah, if she's even, I mean, there's probably about 12 biopics or pseudo biopics made during.
Well, that's the one Golden
rush,
Harvest had distributed.
Yeah,
right?
all of them throw Linda Lee under the bus. Most of them pretend she doesn't even exist because they don't like the idea of their great Chinese hero being. And for the same reason, I think Bruce's time in America is often downplayed as well.
Yeah, he was American,
So yeah, by birth, but by culture, Chinese. But yeah, just to finish what I was saying about Andre Morgan. So this film is as exploitative as any of the others, but the difference is it was made by trusted family friends, and they obviously didn't fall out over it, because Andre Morgan weirdly ended up working in Hollywood, and he ended up being Brandon and Shannon Lee's agent in the 90s.
Right.
So they obviously didn't fall out over it. So I've got no right to be offended if Linda frickin' Lee isn't. But I'm still just really uncomfortable with it somehow.
Well, that's what happens later on. You know, when the guy who was supposed to be, well, he replaces Chuck Norris's character, when he goes to the grave and he finds out there's a dummy in the grave, and that further fueled.
Exactly, yeah. Stuff like that is fuel for the fire. And yeah, they've got no responsibility. Well, average exploitationeers have no responsibility necessarily in that scenario. But I'd argue Golden Harvest did have a responsibility in that scenario, not to exacerbate the problem, but to be a force for good rather than ill.
So now they're going to change his face so they can basically say, oh, the extras don't, well, the doubles don't have to wear glasses, or shades, but they still do.
It's the strange. I think this might be the stupidest plot point in any film I've ever seen. They think about it for a minute, right? Think about this. So this whole plot device is happening in order to explain why Billy Lowe doesn't look like Billy Lowe anymore. Yeah. But the Billy Lowe we've seen throughout the movie so far has generally been Tang Lung. So we're not expecting him to look like Bruce Lee, because he hasn't. At the point at which they come up with a reason for this, they immediately start putting Tang Lung in costumes, in disguises, and then swap him out for Bruce Lee anyway. So all the footage of Bruce Lee looking like Bruce Lee comes after they've made the character not look like Bruce Lee, so that they can use the doubles that they don't need to use anymore. It's really weird. I'm not imagining this, am I?
No, you're not imagining this, Rob. But it wasn't also, like, years later when RoboCop 3 was made, the idea was to, when he gets set on fire very early on in the film, that was supposed to, they had to reconstruct his face. That's why he looks slightly different, because it's Robert Burke now, not Peter Weller. But they didn't deploy that, because that was that's very Game of Death, or something like that.
I don't care. It's like the Wampa whacking Luke in the face. I'd seen Empire Strikes Back probably 100 times before I realised that that was meant to conceal a wound that I wouldn't have questioned. The guy's in the middle of a war. What, we join him and he's got an injury? That makes perfect sense. I don't need a clumsy, awkward shot of a Wampa's arm.
Oh dear. We did see earlier in the hospital where you see a guy with a beard sort of looking at the X-rays, but he worked for Golden Harvest, right? I think.
Oh,
but there was he was in one of the kung fu documentaries of the 90s. He talked about how quick Bruce Lee's kicks were. Just he goes, oh, and he got him in the face. But yeah, he has. I think if you're like a businessman or whatever wants to be in the movies, you could just turn up, be an extra. You don't have to read any lines. You just turn up and they'll put you in the movie. As long as you can wait, if you willing to wait around for hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Was he a Westerner?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's English.
Yeah. Especially if you've got a guilo face, then you're. I mean, we know this from the ninja movies, don't we? If you're a white guy, you've just got to walk through the gates of a Hong Kong film studio, and they'll put you in a movie.
That's where you see Bob Wall's character later on, where he's got his apparent girlfriend who's like a model or something at the time. She'll just be in the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you identify that woman and look her up, she'll probably be in a bunch of movies in Hong Kong, all in the period of like 6 months or whatever, because that's when she was just passing through Hong Kong. But it's cool though, because it means you often end up with real characters in these movies who you don't learn. Like Pierre Kirby, who was in a bunch. Well, he's in like half a dozen Godfrey Ho ninja movies, and he just disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. And it turns out that he was like running guns out of Hong Kong to Japan or some like crazy shit like that. Because what are the kind of people who pass through Hong Kong and spend a few months there without having a job to do? They're not necessarily the most upstanding of citizens.
If they're staying there for more than 2 weeks, something's up.
They don't have a day job. They're staying in that insane. I can't remember what it's called now, but that massive building where all the foreigners stayed, where it was dirt cheap and basically just run by the triads.
Now, this film feels like you could take this footage and put it with the Spider-Man TV movie Dragon's Challenge. It feels exactly the same.
Hugh O'Brien he's just the perfect 70s bad guy. Look at him with his cane, with his walking stick, with the ivory dog's head.
Just imagine Nicholas Hammond turning up as Spider-Man in the background, just like karate chopping people.
Completely. They all look like it. Mel Novak as well. In fact, Mel Novak used to be it. That's all Mel Novak used to do, is TV shows like that.
This is a TV show shot on anamorphic film. That is it, and then they cobbled on Game of Death footage. Because it just felt like that. It always felt like that. It didn't feel never felt like a proper movie. Despite they're essentially taking the same talent behind Enter the Dragon, and just kind of let's do it again.
Yeah, I think it was a big mistake on Godfrey Ho's part to just basically farm out. Robert Clouse made Enter the Dragon massive, so we'll farm Game of Death out to him and his people, and he'll do the same thing again. What it took people a little while to realise, I think, is that Robert Clouse is an appalling, talentless hack, and who just got really lucky.
Well, he didn't particularly like shooting action. He didn't like working with martial artists. He had no respect for them.
He shot none of the action in this movie. Samo Hung shot it all.
A lot of it would be, obviously Samo Hung would be in control, but then once I think Robert Clouse had done his edit, Samo could go in and redo stuff and reshoot some stuff.
Yeah, basically, Robert Clouse was contractually, the only director on the movie. He had it in his contract that the director's chair would not be shared according to the credits. So for the sake of appearances, he'd pretend to basically shoot the action scenes, but not really bother, and go home. And then Samo would come and reshoot them at night. And on the other version, on the international version of this, Samo is joint credited as director because Klaus's contract didn't cover international releases. Here he's like fight choreographer or something, and he's not even credited as Samo Hung Kambo, I think is his full name. He's credited as like Kim Boo or something like that.
He's drawing a beard on a photo. This is like, he's got all his makeup stuff. It's like the Fast Show. Right, it takes 5 hours to do the makeup. He just puts a wig on and he's done.
But also, shouldn't he have been drawing that beard and glasses on a photo of himself in order to try and make it, to know whether or not he was going to look like Bruce Lee?
Oh, God.
There's a lot of these red. I don't think there are in this movie, but there's a lot of like red Adidas tracksuits in Bruceploitation because of. And I don't think this is actually one, but it's making me think of it.
Is this the TV show?
It is. I'm convinced it's because there's a famous. But people forget. But the Green Hornet wasn't Bruce's only TV show. He made Longstreet. Afterwards, he didn't have such a prominent role in it. He wasn't in every episode, but he was in a bunch of episodes, and he had quite an important and dignified and significant presence when he was in them, much like Kato. But he wore a red Adidas type tracksuit, and that became really popular in Hong Kong.
Also, he was in that film called Marlowe, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In 69, something like that, 68. That's coming out soon by Arrow.
Oh, is it?
But I've only seen the bit Bruce is in.
Because so's everyone.
It's the film's gonna be shit. It's like, just watch the Bruce Lee bit.
This guy, I can't remember his name, but whenever you see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, other than in that final fight scene, it's apparently this guy, because he's the only black guy they could find. So they put a beard and an afro on him and turn the lights out. That would always remind me of that Godzilla cartoon, These Boats. Did you used to watch that as a kid? I used to love
Not
that
the
Godzilla cartoon.
No.
God knows why there was a flying boat in a Godzilla cartoon, but there was.
Now, Game of Death was huge in Japan when it came out, and the Japanese are kind of obsessed with this film. And obviously, they wanted to know where the footage was, the remaining footage. When Barry Logan had found it, I think Golden Harvest had, whoever had owned it at the time, maybe Fortune Star, had sold it to the Japanese for a huge sum of money. Say the Japanese company own it, right? I don't think they've passed it on, but they've now. Then they put that 30 minutes of footage that was usable out in cinemas in Japan.
Yeah, and I don't know if they own the rights to it or how they license it or what, because obviously Arrow have got access to. I mean, the most complete, as far as I understand it, the only way to see every frame of the footage so far found, because like I say, there is believed to be more still, is in that Arrow documentary, or it's more of a video essay, the final Game of Death. But there's also a weird Japanese film called Bruce Lee in G.O.D., Bruce Lee in Game of Death.
Yes.
Which I can't begin to understand. I don't have a version with subtitles or anything. I can't figure out what the hell it's trying to be. It's like it's for the first half, it's kind of like a reenactment of the circumstances surrounding the beginning of the making of Game of Death, but it's set in contemporary times, and it doesn't claim to be an accurate whatever, and it's really, really weird. And then at the end, there's a construction of that footage, which I think is about half an hour long.
Yeah, I think that the one I was most familiar with, I think, was it A Warrior's Journey?
Yeah, the documentary.
It's a documentary at the beginning. Then it shows you the footage, right? Yeah. And it sort of does some quite good reenactments of like recreating stuff with the pagoda at the exterior, where you see people walk towards it, and there's someone in a room where they've been kidnapped, or he's been told, Bill Bruce's character been told that they've been taken. So those little moments that kind of work quite well.
Yeah. But I mean, I think there are 3 different constructions of what is, like I say, I think we're saying there's basically half an hour's worth of usable footage. And when you cut the bits together, you take out, because there's a lot of alternate takes as well. There's Bruce's unbelievable nunchuck kind of demo in Game of Death, which we'll see later. There's one particular bit he does where the speed is just, I mean, it's just ridiculous, absolutely insane. I remember watching it with my dad and him refusing to believe that it wasn't sped up, and it is ridiculous. So you get to see Bruce doing that, and it took him 10 goes, which is there's a little bit of an infallibility thing creeps in there, don't it? Once you watch him fail, but you realise that the reason he's failing is because he's doing it so much faster than anyone else could do. We cut from Dan Inosanto doing the same thing. Dan Inosanto is a nunchuck expert. He taught Bruce Lee nunchucks. He is a stick. He was like a stick god. And he can't go nearly as fast as Bruce could. And he says himself, within a few months of, because when he first showed nunchucks to Bruce said that's a child's toy. It's completely useless, and was completely against the idea of them. But gradually and reluctantly admitted he did quite like them, and within 6 months was faster than Inosanto thought was even possible.
It's like the perfect Bruce Lee accessory, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's completely non-traditional in kung fu terms. I think that something we haven't really touched on is
it was like used in the field, wasn't it?
There's all kinds of different origin story. Yeah, I wouldn't want to claim. I mean, I see it as a Japanese weapon primarily, but there are other theories as well. But the thing is, Bruce was so much against the entrenched philosophies of both kung fu, martial arts in general, and as by extension the Hong Kong approach to martial arts movies. He hated the old-fashioned wushu. He hated wuxia. He hated the reliance on form and rigidity of repeated techniques and so on. And just as with his films, with his kung fu technique, he wanted to pull the best from everywhere and make something new. And we've got to remember that watching Game of Death, because it's got none of that great stuff in it that Bruce was doing.
None of his philosophy,
apart from the things that he forced to be in it, like the yellow jumpsuit and the nunchucks that you really can't get around. I mean, it looks ridiculous even from the ground, that beard.
I know. This is a bit where he attacks Dean Jagger, right? And but he strangles him or something, but he has to lower him down very
Really
slowly.
slow. He's an old man.
He's such an old man. It's like, why put this old git in this scenario?
I think he's a genuinely like scary villain though, because he's like, I don't know. There's something about skinny old bald men that scares me. Always has done. And
he looks like Rupert Murdoch.
You're absolutely right. And nothing scarier than that.
It's foreshadowing, isn't it?
But to think that this is the guy who was the general in White Christmas, Bing Crosby's commanding officer in White Christmas, like one of the nicest characters in movie history, one of the most cozy and comforting characters ever.
He's in Game of Death. Here we go. Wait, this is so good.
Like all the scariest people, he's just not intimidated.
This location looks weirdly like the level in Street Fighter with Fei Long's character. The background.
Should mention actually what you were saying about Japan a minute ago. Do you know the story about this being pre-sold in Japan? There is a theory that goes the only reason this was even made was because of a legal obligation in Japan, because it was the one country that Golden Harvest had pre-sold Game of Death in. So they were contractually obliged to deliver a movie called Game of Death featuring Bruce Lee to the Japanese market.
Before Enter the Dragon, so they've already pre-sold in 72.
Before Enter the Dragon was made. But there are people who are more expert than me have pointed to details in this that suggest it was made for a specifically Japanese audience, despite the English dialogue and the Western faces, that it was primarily made for the Japanese.
Oh, they did a canon.
Yeah.
Pre-sold it.
Because as you say,
Bruce has got Chuck.
Like as you say, Bruce was absolutely enormous in Japan, and so was this film, which I think this made more than any of his other Bruce Lee movie did in Japan.
Out of all the Bruce Lee movies, well, Enter the Dragon's still number 1, but this is number 2.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, a success. But it wouldn't surprise me if this had performed better at the time in Japan over Enter the Dragon. We probably naturally would have done, because it would have been like over that 5 years, Bruce became more and more popular, and then to see the last 12 minutes of footage of him, you're going to see it. You know. I think everyone in this film should wear shades.
Yeah. All these fight scenes were choreographed by Samo.
I mean, that's pretty bloody good, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. The scene in the locker room, with fake Bruce against Bob Wall, that's a great fight scene.
That's my fave.
I don't think this movie gets the respect it deserves for its fight scenes, actually, because it all gets kind of lumped in together a little bit with the rip-off and the Bruceploitation and the fake actors, but Samo's choreography, I mean, he was just emerging as a leading choreographer. In fact, he probably was the leading choreographer in Hong Kong at this moment. But also, my single favourite Bruce Lee fight is the one he has with Dan Inosanto later on in the yellow jumpsuit on the 3rd floor of the pagoda, well, depending on which version you see. I think I prefer that fight to the one at the end of Way of the Dragon.
Oh, that's interesting. There's a bit more, I suppose, a bit more variety with Fight Against Dan, because you've got weapons.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, and it's scrap, and it's missing something that Way of the Dragon, because Way of the Dragon's fight has that beautiful storyline as well. Which is kind of what the whole point of Game of Death was in Bruce's mind, was to repeat that storyline of that fight with Chuck Norris and Colt at the end of Way of the Dragon, whereby Bruce kind of starts relatively traditionally, realizes that traditional technique is not going to cut it against someone of this standard, and has to adapt and change and start incorporating other styles, and then he overcomes. That was his whole that was Bruce Lee's obsession with movies. That's what he wanted to do with movies and with martial arts, to prove that that we have to get away from these rigid styles and systems and combine them, essentially create MMA. And that story is brilliant, and because the Inosanto fight is a little bit chopped up, there's a couple of bits where there obviously wants to be an insert shot or a bit here, a bit there. But just as pure visceral entertainment, I think it's his best fight.
We see with Bob Wall, because he's a proper genuine martial artist, but his fighting style on camera just didn't look great, did it? No. And that was always the thing with like The Way of the Dragon and Enter the Dragon. And to give him credit, he looked his best in this.
Yeah.
Especially with the fight in the locker room.
Yeah.
It's just his kicks didn't look great.
I know exactly what you mean. It's a problem that large Guilo men, especially professional fighters, have always looked a bit wrong to me, a bit uncomfortable, especially in Hong Kong action movies. Chuck Norris was kind of the first to get away from that in a way for me. People like Bob Wall and Joe Lewis, who I can't stand, and a couple of other guys from that generation, they just look, I don't know, they look stiff and awkward and not quite right.
Yeah.
Especially next to Samo.
That's when you look at Jean-Claude when he starts fighting. He already knows how to fight on camera.
Yeah, exactly. Cynthia Rothrock is one of very few Guilo martial artists, I think, who just looked great straight off the bat.
Oh man,
in Hong Kong movies as well. Really underrated, Cynthia Rothrock.
She did do a lot of just exhibition things and displays of kind of the moves. So I think she's already kind of used to how to
probably
make
right.
things
Yeah, she wasn't.
Look
She
right.
wasn't a professional fighter. She was a professional. I forget what the word is, but yeah, like a demonstrator, basically.
Yeah.
Much like I can't remember his name.
Which is a great moment because if you look at the audience, they do look so bored in places because they've been sitting around all day watching this fight be rehearsed over and over again. Everyone's getting hot and bothered.
Jackie Stewart in the background. Yeah, I can't believe this is a set. I didn't realise till watching that commentary that this is a set.
Sorry. I didn't realise it was a set. It's massive.
Yeah. They couldn't in Hong Kong. They couldn't get the rights to film an actual fight for less money than it cost to stage one.
That's bonkeroonies.
And when you do hear this, like using actual locations in Hong Kong does cost a lot of money. Like if you want to film in an office building or a school or something like that, it surprisingly perhaps costs a lot more money than it would in the West. But look at how many extras they've got here.
It's mad, isn't it? Looks huge.
Good old Samo.
Samo's like selling every hit. He's way over the top with being hit. Well, he's doing all the work here.
He's not even using his powder, is he? Because I want to say
he does get used later on.
It's probably because they're not wearing clothes. I think it's you kind of need a layer. But because he'd kind of maybe he didn't invent it, but he'd popularised and mainstreamed the use of that powder, the fine flour or some such that you put on someone's chest, so that when you kick them, this like puff of sort of perceived energy almost comes out.
Oh yeah, it just sells the impact.
They did get a bit heavy-handed with it around the early 80s, but
it was like covered in talcum powder. It's not like a cake here. It's flour.
See, but that sidekick Bob Wall just did was so slow. So slow.
My dad here. So I've got to show you a photo of him, Rob, next time I see you. It's bonkers. Looks so like
I saw him at your wedding, and I was convinced. Bernard Cribbins, I felt you looked like, if you remember.
Bernard Cribbins, he does, yeah. He's turned into Bernard Cribbins, yeah.
Of course, Samo claims that he actually fought Bruce Lee in real life. Well, I know there's lots of stories go around about this, but the story I read was Jackie Chan telling the story in his autobiography. And he says they were in the Golden Harvest offices and they walked past Bruce Lee, and Jackie was so junior at the time he wouldn't have acknowledged him or anything, but Samo was more senior and struck up a chat with him and challenged him. And according to Jackie, they went neither of them wanted any witnesses. They went in a room, they fought, they came out of the room. Jackie and Samo went on, and Jackie asked Samo how it had gone, and all Samo would say was, "It was a draw."
I love how Bob Wall can't get through the door.
I know, it's the most awkward bit. You can see him going like, they haven't realised, have they? They haven't realised what's going to. This is going to be they're not going to duck. I'm going to have to.
That's how Rob gets around. He has to keep ducking on the doors. There was Jackie's story where he was like went bowling with Bruce or something like that. Do you remember? Have you heard that story?
No.
One of the last times he saw Bruce, where he was out on the streets and he bumped into him and they went bowling. But Jackie did the bowling, but Bruce just kind of watched. Then he got into a taxi and went off.
I do remember that. Yes, I do remember him telling that story. Actually, yeah. Because he's in. I can't remember now if he's in all of the earlier movies, but he's certainly
he's in Fist of Fury.
He's definitely in Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon.
And Enter. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah. I don't think he's in the other ones. He's just a stunt double. He was just to get thrown through walls or,
Yeah. Well, he's got one of the most famous moves in Fist of Fury. He's the Japanese karateka who gets kicked through the wall and out into the Japanese garden. It's like pulled on a massive wire. Like basically, like who is the most. Who's going to put up with the most crap, basically? And, Jackie. And then, in fact, we'll see in this scene, there's quite a bit of doubling from Yun Bao, who is the third member of the trilogy of greats that all grew up together in Samo Hung, Jackie Chan, and Yun Bao. He was the more sort of acrobatic of the three. He's very good at the gymnastics side of it. And
he does the flips. And did he also do the flips in Enter the Dragon? For Bruce?
I think he did. Yeah, I think he did.
I know because Bruce had his one guy he did do the acrobatic stuff.
Oh, was it him or was it? Oh shit, I can't remember now. But he definitely does it in this. Samo was put in charge of casting the lookalikes for this, and they went to Bruce Lee first of all. Bruce Lee said no. I think I mentioned that earlier. I'm not doing that.
He did, yeah.
So Samo actually cast Tang Lung and Yun Bao, who'd obviously have cast anyway because they were little brother, big brother. So every time you see like some kind of really this is all Tang Lung, but every time you see something really elaborate, some kind of like huge flip.
Look at that!
The flip off the bench
awesome.
That's Yun Bao.
I love the bit in the moment when he grabs him, he puts his arms backwards and he flips over and kicks him.
That's
so
Yun Bao
cool.
as well, yeah. He's about 3 inches shorter than Tang Lung, Yun Bao, so you can often tell when he's... But funnily enough, he's probably about the same size as Bruce Lee, who was a little shorter than average, even for his heritage. That Bruce Lee, who plays him more often than anyone else in the biopics, always stands out for being too tall.
You know the insert shot where he gets hit? It's got like complete it's a restaurant. The wallpaper's there. Oh, why?
It's like that shot at the beginning of this movie when the light nearly falls on him when he's shooting Fist of Fury, and then there's an insert shot of him looking up, and he's outside in the Colosseum.
It's literally like the guy has to re-edit Radioactive Man the movie. Yeah. Seamless, huh? You're fired.
Tang Lung is good though. I think he's
brilliant. He's really good.
He comes closer to the speed, getting the speed right.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee is good as well because he was a real fighter and he's got the same kind of physique, very small, very thin.
But because he's brilliant in Tower of Death. As all the martial arts stuff. He's very impressive.
Yeah.
Here we go. He's going to do this. The flip now. So cool. God, Bob Wool's so funny. He's proper 70s, isn't he? Like that hair and stuff. It's every 30-year-old British man.
I tell you what, here's another weird connection to No Retreat, No Surrender. Not only look at him go, and he's like is he Korean?
He's Korean. Yeah.
He is Korean, isn't he? Yeah. It's often where the really strong kickers often come from Korea because they're like taekwondo, hapkido. They're very focused on powerful kicks. But yeah, so this guy Tang Lung, he plays Bruce Lee in No Retreat, No Surrender, the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and in No Retreat, No Surrender, the opening scene, they drive past the karate dojo that at the time, or at least shortly before, was I think co-owned by Bob Wall.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Chuck Norris. I can't. Oh my god, I can't. A bunch of those
I know
'60s
you got
karate
Benny's the
guys.
Jet Center, but it wasn't the Jet Center.
No, it's the really famous one. Oh god, what's it bloody called? I can't remember what it's called now. It's
Chuckle Brothers.
It's really famous.
And that was a super telephone. That was huge. That must be a built-in answer machine messenger.
Back in a '70s police procedural.
I think I've got those mugs at home. Come on, someone pick up a phone. This is proper phone action scene. This is. You could take some of this footage and funnel it into an Omen sequel.
No, this is the exasperated editor of a newspaper, and he's dealing with his keen young reporter who he just can't keep under control.
Man, again, it's Spider-Man. It's a Dragon's Challenge too. All right.
It's actually he looks a bit like the guy whose name Darren McGavin, is it? The guy who plays Kolchak, the Night Stalker. And that series looks a lot like this. It could easily be the Kolchak newspaper officers.
Oh yes, telephone. I know he's. Oh no, he's pressing a button.
Glad to see the triads are respectfully showing the correct license plates on their motorcycles.
They are indeed.
Following the important laws.
I thought he was eating his walking stick then.
Yeah, God, it would have been great to see Chuck in this role.
I know, but he made the right decision not to do it because he he knew it was exploitative trash. Obviously, probably wasn't maybe short of change at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the only one short of money at the time was Linda Lee. Sadly. Andre Morgan also produced, I've just remembered, I'm thinking about how much I resent Andre Morgan, even though I probably shouldn't, because Linda Lee doesn't. So he also produced Martial Law, the TV series, with Samo, which is absolutely marvellous if you've never seen it.
I've seen a few episodes. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Proper old-fashioned police procedural type thing, but with Samo Hung in the lead. What more could you ask for?
But does it have some great telephone action like now?
Not as great as this. I forget. I'm just used to this in Hong Kong movies because it's normally something by Godfrey Ho that I'm watching, and those telephones are used so that one movie can talk to the other.
Oh dear!
A photo of him as a child there.
That's Bruce's photo as a kid, isn't it?
That's at least that's something this movie doesn't do that a lot of the biopics do, is incorporate footage from the films he made as a kid as if they're like flashbacks or like family, like 8mm family videos.
Hey, dude, man, if you're desperate for stuff, you're going to do it, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's cool though. There's one, I think it's the real Bruce Lee. Oh no, actually I can't remember which one it is, but there's one where you get to see him acting with his father, his real life father, which is that's interesting.
Well, this graveyard is the one they used in Enter the Dragon, right?
Yeah.
And he says, he
Sister,
speaks to his...
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course this didn't do anything to exaggerate the public's belief that he wasn't really dead. And again, the problem with this is that a lot of people point to the fact that the Bruce Lee in his coffin footage, he doesn't look exactly like Bruce Lee, and in fact, even one of the movies talks about it in order to justify. They feel the need to explain this is the real Bruce Lee we're showing dead. Honestly, we're not trying to cheat you by showing you, and that's what sort of powered this theory that he didn't really die, because obviously when people die, when they're dead, they look slightly different. Their muscles relax, their blood settles. Of course, they don't look exactly like they did when they were alive. So that is, I mean, that's red rag to a bull, isn't it? That's just...
Yeah. You know, they got away with so much stuff in the 70s. Just like, again, it falls under that sort of bad taste and not really considering other people's feelings just to make a profit.
I mean, yeah. There's a lot of there's no clear right and wrong in these situations, but I don't know. It went too far for me to be entirely comfortable with. So we've scarred him. We've given him an operation. He's got sunglasses. He's got beards, but we're still just going to shoot him in the dark.
I know. And he's speaking to his girlfriend or something. Don't look at my face.
You know who's doing a lot of the other voices in this? Most of the Chinese voices are done by James Hong.
Really?
Yeah, because this was dubbed in the US. Unusually, it's not a Hong Kong dub, which is why the acting is the voice acting is much better, to be fair, in this than it is in the other Bruceploitation movies.
This and the Dragon have like the best audio of Bruce's movies.
That is true. But yeah, James Hong did pretty much all the non-specific voices.
What? Oh, God. So many telephone conversations in this film.
Robert Klaus, man.
He loves a good... Okay, I've read so many times, and even Bay Logan says it from years ago, like, Robert Klaus was deaf.
Yeah.
And he had assistant directors to tell him if the dialogue was good enough with that delivery, whatever, right? And then if you just, like, Google it, and people say, no, he wasn't deaf. It's like, what is going on? But I've never seen an interview with Robert Klaus, like on camera.
I've always been led to believe that he was hard of hearing. And I think I mentioned it, actually, when I was talking about Jim Carter in a video at some point, because it's an obvious cheap joke, isn't it? The guy who writes shit dialogue is deaf. But it would explain how Jim Carter can be the way it is if he was deaf. Mind you, he'd also need to be blind to really nail that one. But, I mean, this is the perfect example of what a hack Robert Klaus is. Enter the Dragon, how much credit does he deserve for that? Well, he made exactly the same movie again a few years later, called Force 5, with Joe Lewis, and it is almost unwatchable. It's one of the worst movies in terms of being utterly without redeeming features. It is terrible, but in no way is it terrible in an entertaining or enjoyable way. And it's just bad. It's just bad, really bad. And it's almost exactly the same film. And then a few years after that, he did it again with Jim Carter, which at least has the good grace to be bad in an entertaining way. But it's horrendously bad. It's a bad movie. And
what about China O'Brien?
Well, yeah, then my theory starts to fall down a little bit. But that had the advantage of Cynthia Rothrock, and Richard Norton.
And Keith Cook's in it as well.
And, I mean, you can't balls everything up all your life, can you? Sometimes things are going to go right.
But didn't he try to do... Robert Klaus had done a movie with Jim Kelly.
Oh, he did, didn't he? Yeah, I think, is it Black Sand? Yeah, you're right, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, one of those terrible Jim...
Wave of success.
Because Jim Kelly is great. I love Jim Kelly. All of his films are terrible.
Yeah, that's the thing. He didn't... it's unfortunate because he's such a great personality.
Yeah. Hot Potatoes. It's got some fun to it, but yeah, like Black Samurai, and was it Enter the Black Dragon? Was it? Oh, I can't remember now. But yeah, he did do one of those terrible Jim Kelly movies. Yes, some people, they have one hit that isn't necessarily due to them, and they ride that forever.
I think that's what he did, despite him not having much interest in action movies, and shoots them in a very straightforward manner. Didn't like anyone coming up saying, "Oh, you've got to shoot some insert shots here for impact." No, we don't do that.
No, I mean, and I mean, this is what's the best thing about this movie. I don't think anyone is going to disagree if I say it's the Bruce Lee footage at the end. And what's the second best thing about this movie? Well, there's a couple of really good fight scenes that Samo choreographed. So we've just named all the good things about this movie, and it's all the things he had nothing to do with. Robert Klaus had nothing to do with.
Another phone conversation. He's getting out of control, man. The whole film should be taking place in like phone boxes, shouldn't it?
Oh, I like this. These are nice shots there. A couple of really nice shots.
This is very Robert Wise from Star Trek.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, split diopter. It is. In fact, that must have been a Some kind of clever split focus thing was going on there. Now, this is now part of the sequence that leads into the finale, isn't it? Yes. So this is all essentially setting up the only reason for this movie to exist. Bear in mind, note that it's pissing with rain and it's dark.
Oh, there's continuity gaps coming.
There might be some continuity gaps coming. There might be just a little bit of dodgy continuity.
Don't throw in rain when it's going to mess with continuity. For God's sake, people.
So they've got footage that they need to match, and that footage is a bright sunny day that's dry. So they choose for the setup to be nighttime and rain. Why? I mean, it does look cool.
Maybe someone told Robert that, but he weren't listening, or because he's deaf.
But like, imagine if at the start of the Bruce Lee footage he was soaking wet. It would that would be a perfectly clever but he isn't. So why? And you can see in these darker bits that these guys in black, it does all get lost a bit, doesn't it? The blacks do get a bit crushed, and
they do. Yeah,
you can see why you wouldn't want your hero in a dark outfit in a dark set.
There's one shot there of Bruce where he's in the door, he's locked it, and he's kind of, I don't know where that shot's from. I think it must be from.
When he first goes into the restaurant. Yeah, I did actually.
So I thought that was maybe an optically added bit, but it didn't seem to be.
No, there is a shot as he goes into the restaurant from another movie that I've specifically noted it before, but I can't remember now.
Walks in wearing a white vest. Suddenly through the game of death. Jiminy Jillican. It's like.
This is the slow motion glass torturing scene.
Oh God, yeah. There's a lot of slow mo here. Feels like something out of a Bond movie at that time. Actually, a Bond movie from the late 60s.
Well, there's a lot of slow motion in Bruceploitation in general. I'm convinced it's to. I'm actually finally dropping the Garth Marenghi clip of Richard Ayoade going, yes, there was a lot of slow motion, but we tried to keep it away from the dialogue scenes.
Of extend an episode. That's loads of slow mo.
Yeah, take his helmet off.
He's getting the suit now. What's he getting? He's walking. Oh, he's getting a. I can't remember now. What weapon is he put? Is he getting like a rifle?
I can't remember for the life of me now. What Mel? That was Mel Novak, wasn't it? I can't remember for the life of me what he's here to do now. I tell you, the funny thing about this yellow jumpsuit is just everyone had already ripped it off before this movie was released. We think of it as obviously the Game of Death jumpsuit, and that's the only time Bruce Lee ever wore it. And as Bay Logan says, it's probably the most iconic Bruce Lee outfit.
Yeah,
but
and for a film that was never properly released.
It had become that even before the film was released in 1970. By 1978, everyone had ripped off that yellow jumpsuit a bunch of times because there was a really famous promotional photo that was in all the newspapers and so on. So people knew, and they knew that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was going to be in it as well. So then that became a thing. Fighting really tall black guys became a thing in Bruceploitation.
Wasn't it in terms of when Bruce went to when he was shooting the original Game of Death, that Kareem's fight was the first fight he'd done because of Kareem had to play basketball. I think it was he had a short window in which to film it.
Yeah, I know he was passing through Hong Kong and had specifically arranged his flight transfer so he could meet up with Bruce, who was by that point had effectively moved back to Hong Kong, was living there quite a bit. So his older American celebrity friends he was a little bit out of touch with, and I know that's how they discussed it and planned it. I don't know whether it was actually shot on that trip or not. But it was shot completely out of sync. I think it was the first thing shot, and it was like, we've got the chance, let's do it. It was that kind of thing rather than... Yeah, it's a very useful helmet that Bruce is wearing now.
Ah, damn these cardboard boxes. So painful.
It's funny, this scene always reminds me of Future War, which has the definitive cardboard box fight scene. And... I was thinking about it just because you're about
Definitive.
Oh, it is. It's 20 minutes of just people walking about, loads of stacked up cardboard boxes. That's one of the things because you're interviewing Daniel Bernhardt, who stars in Future War, and I'm going to have to get you to ask him about those boxes.
Oh my god! All those packaging just had cans in them. That's weird.
Toys in that one.
At least they got stuff in them, not just empty.
They are very sturdy crates.
The sound effect is so funny. That's the wobbliest set ever. That's like a carry-on.
It is at least like we're coming out of that long spell in the middle of this movie that's just a bit of a slog, a bit of hard work. Not enough fight scenes, basically, compared to all other Bruceploitation. There's very little fighting. Although what there is superior on the whole.
I mean, I think it's it's quite well photographed. This film is.
Yeah,
I don't have an issue with the cinematography. I think it's competently shot.
Yeah, well, that's what it should be, isn't it? I mean, they've got a full Hollywood crew. No excuses. I think this is like a lot of the locations in this, as Bay Logan mentions, but a lot of the locations in this are places that Golden Harvest owned, because they were, like a lot of Hong Kong production companies, they were a little bit, not dodgy, but a little bit inventive when it came to abiding by various laws and rules and so on. So there was a lot of like disseminating money, I think, to avoid paying tax on it. So they ended up owning, I believe anyway, the warehouse where that bike chase scene was shot. And as Bay Logan mentions, or I think he theorizes that they may have owned the restaurant as well. And I want to say that they did. I can't remember where I found that out now, but I want to say they did own. I think it's called the Red Dragon or something like that restaurant. Which again is a real insult to Bruce's idea for this movie. The whole point was that it takes place in this traditional pagoda, this multi-floored pagoda that he'd found in South Korea, strangely, not in China or Hong Kong. And the religious symbolism of that is relevant, presumably, to the whole to that whole the whole idea of progressing upwards through these different levels. And they just turned it into the upper floors of a restaurant. Why would a restaurant have all those pagoda-like empty upper floors with also why would they have a martial art guardian on each floor of a restaurant?
Different floors of complaints you've got to get through to the top. You know what I mean? I'm not happy with this rice. You know what I mean? It's been reheated. But it's like why couldn't Dean Jagger, if that was his character, just be in a pagoda?
Exactly.
That made sense.
It reeks of that famously Hollywood thing, which studio executives and studio heads are normally accused of, which is whenever they inherit a project, they want to get rid of everything that associates it with the previous owners of that project. The previous system of government in that building.
God, he's bone dry now. No, he's a little bit wet. I don't know if he's still a bit wet, but he looks pretty dry now. Must have been boiling. Now, because obviously in the original footage, Bruce goes up the steps with that stick and the nunchuck. So when he goes up, he sees a bunch of weapons. He goes, "Oh yeah, I make sure I grab those too."
Seamless.
It's like seamless, yeah. Fold them.
Right. Okay. Now there's a point to this movie.
Yeah. And the grading's completely different.
And it's bright sunlight outside.
I think they had to grade it so it makes it look a bit more grey in the back, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a set anyway, so I don't know whether that's meant to be sunlight or just the right thing, but we do see later on when he breaks through the wall that it is indeed bright sunlight outside. So this is Dan Inosanto, who was the man who taught Bruce Lee to use nunchucks. He was an absolute demon with all sticked implements. I could never remember the name of his...
But he started martial arts.
Yeah, because he's Filipino. And I get my niche martial arts confused. I can't remember for the life of me which it is. It's not Silat, that's Indonesia. Oh, yeah, I can't remember now. But he was a specialist in short, sticked weapons, basically.
And Bruce Lee's classes weren't cheap, were they? They were quite expensive.
No, not after. To begin with, he was, before the Green Hornet, he was just running a traditional kung fu school. But after that, his clients were obviously famous people. So it was, the figure I see often is $300 for an hour lesson. But then that lesson is like in Bruce Lee's garden, one-on-one. It's not...
Yeah.
This is the stuff. I mean, this...
That's so amazing, isn't it?
If you notice so Bruce has only been using nunchucks for a few years at this point, and you notice that he blinks as he's doing it, whereas Inosanto doesn't.
Doesn't.
He's trained himself. He's been able to train himself not to blink, but then Bruce does it so much faster.
It's like watching Robert Patrick fire a gun. You don't blink, mate.
Yeah.
You know?
As opposed to what's his
Roger
name?
Moore.
Roger Moore. Yeah.
King of the flinches.
So Dan also appeared in Chinese Stuntman, which is the movie. It's the respectable Bruce Lee Bruceploitation movie made by Bruce Lee, and that's really Dan Inosanto's voice as well. Do you remember that bit? I don't know if you got your headphones.
Come in and dub his own
but
voice.
It's really awkward. He's like, "How do you like that?" or something, and it sounds ridiculous. That's really him doing it. And you can see, is it this scene or no? I can't remember if it's this scene or not. There's a bit. There should be like I forgot to keep my eyes open for like a really thick stick. It's like a long staff, but it's much thicker, and it's just by the Tiger King's throne on the ground.
Well, we know Bruce had thrown one behind him.
Yeah, no, it's the stick that what's his name? Not James Tien, the other guy. Was there? It is. You can see it on the floor. You can see it. It's in front of the throne. That's the web. So here. So what actually happens in Bruce Lee's original footage here is the two men he's with, James Tien and Gek Wu. I might be getting that wrong. They've gone on ahead. So Bruce is fighting the guardian of the second floor in his script, just as who is Taki Kimura in his script, who is another one of Bruce's students. He's fighting Taki Kimura on the second floor, and Gekwu and James Tien go ahead to the third floor where Dan Inosanto is and start their fight early. So then Bruce comes... That footage we have of Bruce coming up the stairs with his stick and nunchucks, that's actually happens after the other two have been beaten. So yes. There's a really cool exchange he has with Inosanto then, where Bruce says something like... do you mind if we get my friend out of here so we have more room to groove? It's a really cool line, really cool. And so they carry the semi-conscious body of one of his friends, and then the whole fight takes place with those two guys watching. So they're in the background of most of the footage.
Oh yeah, but they've had to crop it, and
I could only use some of the footage, and it's awkwardly cropped sometimes, and so on. And there's something similar is going on here. You would be cutting back and forth between potentially three different fights at this stage, because you've got James Tien goes on ahead. There in the background there, do you see a dead body at the bottom of the stairs? So that's Gekwu, who I'm going to call Gekwu. I think that name's wrong, but I'm going to call him Gekwu. So what happens is James Tien, who turns out to be a baddie, he's standing off there. There's the body again at the bottom of the stairs. Really obviously, there's a body sitting there. James Tien convinces Gekwu to go on ahead and essentially trying to get him killed and trying to weaken the competition so that he can do it. So Gek Wu runs ahead here, runs up the stairs, and immediately is hurled back down dead by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Not that we've seen Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here yet. So after that happens, James Tien then runs ahead. Bruce is saying, no, don't go, you'll get killed. James Tien runs on ahead. And then while this is happening, James Tien is fighting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar upstairs, and we should be cutting back and forth. And there's some really great moments that I don't think are in this cut, like when James Tien is obviously thrown down on the ground really hard, and we should then cut down to Bruce, who just notices a loud thud and some dust coming down from the ceiling, and it's a really nice. It's all these really nice touches, and they've all just been butchered or lost by Klaus, who just failed to understand what the task was here.
The UK cut of this would have had Dan's scene all cut out because of the nunchuck. So you've only had 2 fights at the end.
And the 2 that, frankly, aren't the best. The nunchuck fight is by far the best.
The Hapkido fight, is it Jan Han Ji? And I can't. Ji Han John?
Yeah.
Sorry for butchering his name there, but that he was also criticised for because his style. He's an absolute, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's a martial arts master, but fighting on camera, he's all stiff and doesn't quite look as good as Bruce.
Exactly. Yeah. It's an unusual fight, that, and he to me he looks a lot like a 1960s Western karate. But it's probably just that that's what it really looks like. And anyone who hasn't been trained on camera...
Because on the rushes, you can see Bruce is somewhat getting a bit frustrated with him because he's not, But then again, that goes with Bruce's criticisms of the form and structure of traditional martial arts, where he's all...
Exactly.
Everything's all stiff in a position, waiting to
exactly, and
defend yourself.
That's something that is so crucial to his whole concept for this that has been completely lost. The whole idea here is that extension of the final fight in Way of the Dragon, that the 2 guys he's with are rigidly trained in their own form of martial arts, and it's just too rigid. It's not effective. Only through Bruce's embracing of other styles is he able to overcome these challenges. But the way it's presented here, the only real trick is that we learn Jabbar is sensitive to the light, and that's what Klaus goes with, and that's what he emphasizes. So there's no suggestion that it's Bruce's philosophy of incorporating other martial arts that have actually enabled him to prevail. And that was the whole point.
But also, Kareem is also supposed to be the master of Jeet Kune Do, so he also has no style at the end.
Yes.
Yes, that's the whole point, wasn't it? So Bruce, he's met his match.
Exactly. This is where there's a lot of theories that there's a missing shot, because it's just a bit awkward, isn't it? There's a few inserts that were shot, so obviously it's gonna happen.
Yeah, Klaus shot 2 inserts where he picks up the nunchucks from the thing, and then when Dan falls over, I think there's a shot they've added.
Yeah. But as it is, this is a man fighting 3 people on 3 floors. As it was conceived, it was ripe with all this philosophy, and also in terms of film language, it would have been much better, because I really like the idea of the camera like cutting up and down in this pagoda. You're going up and potentially down as well to monitor potentially 3 different fights.
It also demonstrates the footage that Bruce had shot for this. When you look at what he did with Way of the Dragon, because he picks up and learns things so quickly, he's improved as a director in this limited amount of footage we have.
Yeah, bright sunlight.
Oh yeah. But also, isn't it from I don't know which documentary it is, where they have a shot where you see his glasses come off. He's got red eyes.
Yes, yeah, they all that got ditched by Klaus. Klaus didn't want to make too much of the idea that this guy was in some way biologically weird.
Right.
I think anyway. I think that's the. I should mention to anyone listening that if you are interested in this movie and the story behind it, and especially this footage, Arrow's 3-hour documentary, The Final Game of Death, is just unbelievable. I mean, you've got to be a hardcore fan because there's a lot of repetition and it's very slow. But the work done by, I think it's made by a guy called James Flower, and the work he did is just superb. It's unbelievable the way it's presented. It's basically him contextualizing the footage, so you can see the same thing over and over again, but with different little bits of context and so on. It's absolutely fascinating. And then the final assembly at the end is the best I think I've seen of the three. Well, there's 4 versions, 3 of them relatively complete that I know of anyway, and I think it's the best.
Come on, Bruce. Come on.
A lot of little inserts and bits from this part of this fight end up being recycled in the fight he has with O'Brien in a minute, up on the upper floor.
My favourite bit in this fight with Kareem is when Bruce has to leap as high as he can to kick him. This goes, wow!
Yeah.
Kicks him, knocks him down.
Yeah.
That's such a great shot.
All this came from just their casual conversations in Bruce's back garden in LA, talking about how mental it would be to film a fight between we two friends, because he was 7'2", Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bruce was 5'6", and he's often described as 5'7", but I think he was 5'6", really. So, hell of a difference.
Why did he fall down the steps?
Can you tell we're back to the new footage?
It's like we're trying to make him jump or something, you know.
It's literally just like, I'm going to pinch your ankle. That'll learn you. God, those 3 consecutive shots there was Yun Bao, Bruce Lee, Tang Lung in the space of probably less than a second. Yeah, this would have been better if it was Chuck Norris, wouldn't it?
The way he's fighting, it's like this.
I shall have you with my fisticuffs. Yeah, I think the noises are good. The battle cries, I think they're good in this movie.
I don't know. It's not quite as.
There's a couple in the Inner Santo fight that are really over the top, but somehow they work. The expression he's making at the time is really over the top as well. So, just looking at my notes, this, of course, would have been the top floor, and we don't know what would have been on this floor. We have no idea. None of Bruce's notes survived telling us. But from the ground up, the first floor was meant to be Wong Yu-sik, who's in Way of the Dragon. He's the guy who tries to prove himself worthy of taking out Bruce Lee in Way of the Dragon and ends up getting beaten up by Chuck Norris.
That's right.
So he would have been the guardian of the first floor, who Bruce and James Tien and Gek Yun, not Gekwu, Gek Yun, would have faced when they arrived. Then on the first floor, they faced Wong Yu-sik. Then the second floor was Taki Kimura, who was, like Dan Inosanto, one of only the three, I think Dan Inosanto, Taki Kimura, and James Lee were the only 3 of Bruce Lee's students who he officially anointed as his official successors in terms of guarding the legacy of Jeet Kune Do and so on. They were the 3
right, yeah.
3 people who. So Taki Kimura was adamant he wasn't going to be in the movie. He was determined that he wasn't going to do it. Bruce was determined that he would do it. Who knows what would have happened there? Then Dan Inosanto on the 3rd floor, who in this movie, of course, is actually the first. And then Chi Hun Zhe, who's the Hapkido expert, and the slightly slow fight. And then, of course, Jabbar would be the final guardian on the 5th floor.
That shot where he looks in the mirror, he's like, just insert a shot from the original footage. Doesn't make any sense.
And here's Robert Klaus shattering the image of Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Go on, Rupert. He really does look like Rupert Murdoch, doesn't he?
You won't take Fox News away from me.
And this would be where George Lazenby apparently turned up to save Bruce's life.
What? Is that a shot there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Bruce, this. Oh my God.
That was Enter the Dragon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
See, the yellow jumpsuit doesn't quite fit properly either, does it? It just doesn't look as good in it.
It's too baggy.
It is, yeah. It's too loose.
Now, what you said was the different ending. You said.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but yeah, apparently there are two different endings. One in which Bruce goes off with his girlfriend, but yeah, I think the main one that's of some interest is he is arrested. The police arrive and arrest him because he has technically broken the law, and therefore in certain territories, just as in the early days of Hollywood.
I mean, this just ends. The guy falls to his death and it ends.
We need to get out of this as quickly as possible and just try and bamboozle everyone with some clips.
It's so true, man. God.
Yeah, so that is the movie that was going to be called Yellow-Faced Tiger originally. That's Bruce's original title for it, but
Well, this is because they said the title Game of Death, having death in the title, was kind of bad.
it's
luck.
inauspicious.
And,
Chinese culture. Yeah.
yeah, but Colleen Camp had been in two other movies. One was like Deadly Games and Death Game.
Yeah.
So didn't really affect her.
She's not Chinese though.
Oh, true.
Because it was because also God, I've forgotten if it was it James Tien or Get Kyun? One of them died really soon after this as well.
Get Kyun.
Was it Get Kyun? Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah, of course it wouldn't. James Tien. But died of the same thing, or basically the same thing. This
aneurysm.
But I saw in a documentary. There's an amazing documentary, it's absolutely terrible, but it's fascinating. I've forgotten what it's called now, I'm afraid. But it's just, it's basically just two interviews. One with one with Bruce Lee's doctor, one with the doctor who treated him on arrival at the hospital, and one with the doctor who did the autopsy.
I've never seen this.
It's just them talking in detail, and it's really interesting, completely from a medical point of view. And doctor who treated him initially is, I think he was a Guaylo, but he was saying that there is this congenital issue in the Chinese genes that means that creates a particular susceptibility to these aneurysm area issues, and so he was initially suspicious of that, and then of course we hear Get Kyun, the same thing happens to him. Say, I don't know, maybe it's
at the same age,
and everyone who isn't a conspiracy mongering moron says the same thing. Like they do accept that it was this aneurysm type thing, and that they are convinced. All of them are convinced that it was the result of overtraining. That apparently he'd spent the previous year, he'd just gone mad with the training, and I mean you can see, his body fat is worryingly low. There's in the May, a couple of months before he died, he blacked out. No one could work out why.
Wasn't it also like he was eating like cannabis, like hash cakes, essentially, to slow himself down?
Yes, this is another really dark aspect to it all, because nobody wants you to know, but Bruce Lee was big into recreational drugs. I don't want to start saying what, because I only know things secondhand. Apart from weed, which everybody knew he was really, really into and ate in large quantities. And there is this theory that contributed to it. And there is a little bit of evidence to support that theory. But of course, what happened was Bruce Lee's got a big life insurance payout coming to the family. If it's established that illegal drug use was even a tiny part of his death, that insurance, it becomes invalid. So weirdly, there was a lot of pressure from Linda and the family, I think, as well as Bruce's parents, Golden Harvest, certainly, to, make sure that they got the result they wanted from the autopsy. But that is not to suggest that the result of the autopsy is not real, is not true. I think it is. I don't think a triad death touch or eating weed leaves was responsible. But
was it? I'm sure it's like a result of essentially allergic reaction to a painkiller.
That's the theory. Yeah, this type of painkiller. But I mean, the problem is because he was having an affair at the time. There's a lot of misinformation existed right from the start. So the Golden Harvest initially said that he died at home, I think it was, and then it immediately became apparent that he hadn't. He died in his
mistress's house.
Then the rumor starts that he died, that they were actually having sex when he died, which follows. God, what was the movie? I even wrote Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger. Is the one that introduces that, or that plays with that theory, that he died actually during sex. We know, or I think logically, it seems likely that he died quite a while before the ambulance was called, that he was dead when Betty Ting Pei didn't call an ambulance. She called Godfrey Ho to ask what to do when she found Bruce Lee unresponsive. Godfrey Ho didn't say call an ambulance. Godfrey Ho said call this doctor we've got on the payroll who we can control. That doctor then said, call a fucking ambulance. But by that point, there's no official word, I don't think. And there's footage in some of the movies of him actually being removed from Betty Ting Pei's apartment.
My God, so someone knew he was
Either
there.
Golden Harvest got cameras there before they got medical staff there, or the media was informed early enough to get there before any kind of medical. So there's actual footage of him being wheeled out. And you can see his face, and you don't know whether he's dead or whether he's unconscious. And I mean, that's messed up, man. That's pretty messed up. So Betty Ting Pei, who's clearly freaked out, clearly did, maybe she was scared. I don't know. I don't want to judge her too harshly, but didn't do anything useful, really. And there's a lot to suggest that it may have been something that was treatable and could have been. Who knows? Nobody knows.
Wasn't he supposed to? He was supposed to meet George Lazenby.
Yeah. George Lazenby was in the restaurant with with Raymond Chow. I keep saying Godfrey Ho when I mean Raymond Chow. They were in the restaurant together when Betty Ting Pei. The whole thing is just it doesn't. No one is covered in glory over this. Betty Ting Pei then 6 months later makes a pseudo documentary.
Yeah, I know about that.
Where it does nothing but defends her position. Basically, she's saying things like, people have said that Bruce and I were having an affair," which is obviously true. I said, these words are so hurtful. Bruce and I were very good friends, but Bruce was very good friends with lots of beautiful actresses, including. You're sitting there thinking, "Fucking hell!" She is literally, this isn't. It just died, and she's making a documentary saying, "I wasn't the only one he was having an affair. He was having an affair with loads of women, and I'm going to name them." Like, what the fuck is going on?
God. Oh, man.
Meanwhile, Linda Lee's at home trying to make ends meet. And Betty Ting Pei then goes on to star in one of the most successful Bruceploitation movies, playing herself. I'm not even going to say what it is because I don't want anyone to see it.
Well, there you go, folks. That's the comment to Game of Death with some added Bruce Lee death trivia at the end. Remember, it's Raymond Chow, not Godfrey Ho.
Yeah, every time I said Godfrey Ho, I meant Raymond Chow. Godfrey Ho just lives in my mind.
Well, everyone, hope you enjoyed the commentary. Me and Rob will be back with some more very soon. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye.